bunch of Republicans won office throughout the country in the last elections, including a lot of Republican governors. 31 out of the 50 states now have Republican governors. And these Republican governors are always talking about how they want to bring home some tax cuts for those states because they think that that grows the economy and ultimately helps their budget. Now, what they didn't tell you is they meant tax cuts for the rich. They meant tax increases for the poor and the middle class. So now that's not conjecture. They're in office and they've made proposals. Let me tell you about those proposals and what their effects are. New York Times explains, of the 10 or so Republican governors who have proposed tax increases, nearly all have called for increases in consumption taxes, which hit the poor and middle class harder than the rich. So what are the different things that they are proposing to increase taxes on? Gas, e-cigarettes, goods and services in general, and in Maine, even movie tickets and haircuts. Now, why is this a good thing for them and terrible thing for you guys? Well, if you're rich, a haircut's a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of your income. But if you're poor or middle class, well, it's a larger percentage of your income, so that tax increase winds up affecting you a lot more. In fact, let's give you some hard numbers behind that. While the bottom fifth of earners pay more than 10% of their income in state and local taxes, the top 1% pays closer to 5%, according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. So think about that for a second. The top 1% is paying half as a percentage of their income in state and local taxes than the bottom 20%. So the rich are paying half of what the poor are paying, again, as a percentage. What? Isn't that backwards? Isn't that unbelievable? They can afford to pay so much more, but they're paying less. Why? Because they're the guys who are the donors who got the politicians elected in the first place. So how are they going to rig the rules? They're going to rig the rules in their favor, not in somebody else's favor. So that's why the politicians come out with, oh my God, yeah, we got to cut that income tax. Oh, I'm in favor of tax cuts. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm totally in favor of tax increases because I somehow got to run the state, right? And those tax increases are going to go to you. So you got to pay more for movie tickets, gas, etc. God, they're such unbelievable hypocrites. Now, let's go to the issue. Well, did it work though? Did it really grow the economy? Did you get a better, revenue and so your budget's healthier? The answer is no. A new report from Keystone Research Center and Good Jobs First suggests that these states could be creating financial problems down the road. The strategy of shifting from income taxes to consumption taxes has caused huge budget shortfalls in Kansas and more recently North Carolina, which announced a budget shortfall of nearly $500 million. So it's not really for the budget. It's just to give the tax cuts to the rich and shift the tax burden onto you because that's who got them elected. And you keep on voting for them and they're going to keep on treating you like a sucker. But the bigger problem, of course, is the system entirely. Change the system. Don't have it so that the donors get to decide what our policy is. wolf-pack.com. All right, now, one final note for you guys. Is there anything else we could do? It's because a lot of people look at income inequality, they feel helpless about it. Oh my God, well, I guess that's how capitalism is. I guess that's how our form of government is. That's not true. We didn't have income inequality like this before. In fact, when we didn't have money flooding into politics, and yes, there was such a time, we had much better income equality. So what could we do instead? Well, New York Times explains that as well. Taxing the top fifth of earners at the same rate as the middle class would bring in $200.5 billion to state and local coffers, the report says. Taxing just the top 1% at the same rate as the middle class would bring in $88.5 billion, 10 times the amount needed to restore 5 years' worth of cuts to higher education. So all the time that these governors tell you, oh my God, I had to cut the education budget. They just did it in Wisconsin. They just did it in Kansas. They're doing it all over. I had to cut it. I didn't have a choice. The reality is all they have to do is charge the top 1% the same rate, not a different rate, not a higher rate, the same rate that the middle class pays, and they would have more than enough to pay for all that education and then some. understand the lies that are being fed to you. Okay, this is the reality. These are the numbers. These are the facts. The reality is income inequality in this country could be a lot better if we just had different policies. How do you get better policies? If your representatives actually represent you instead of the people who got them elected, which is their donors. So why don't we get money out of politics so that we can have a system that represents the American voters? Wouldn't that be amazing? wolf-pack.com. Come join the fight. We'll do it together.